Warning, this podcast contains descriptions of murder, torture and abuse. As a result, it may not be suitable for everybody. Belfast, Northern Ireland, meaning the mouth of the Sandbank Ford, the capital and largest city in Northern Ireland, standing on the banks of the River Lagan on the east coast. It's the 12th largest city in the United Kingdom and the second largest city in the island of Ireland. It has a population of 343,000 as of 2009. Belfast suffered greatly in the Troubles in the 1970s and 80s. It was one of the world's most dangerous cities, with a homicide rate of 31 per 100,000. Listen to the hometown murder case of Ann Ogilby, also known as the Romper Room murder, which took place in Sandy Row, South Belfast, Northern Ireland on the 24th of July 1974. It was for the punishment killing carried out by members of the Sandy Row Women's Ulster Defence Association unit. The murder of Ann Ogilby took place in Sandy Row, South Belfast on the 24th of July 1974. This was punishment killing by the Ulster Defence Association unit. At the time, the UDA was the legal Ulster loyalist paramilitary organisation. The victim, Ann Ogilby, a Protestant single mother of four, was beaten to death by two teenage girls after being sentenced to a rompering, which was a UDA slang term for a torture session followed by a fatal beating at a kangaroo court. Ogilby had been having an affair with a married UDA commander, William Young, who prior to his internment had made her pregnant. His wife, Elizabeth Young, was a member of the Sandy Row Women's UDA unit. Ogilby had made defamatory remarks against Elizabeth Young in public regarding food parcels. 8 weeks after Ogilby had given birth to Young's son, the women's unit decided that Ogilby would pay for both the affair and the remarks for her life. The day following the kangaroo court trial, they arranged for the kidnapping of Ogilby and her 6-year-old daughter, Sharlene, outside a social services office by UDA man Albert Bumper Graham. A group of UDA women then followed the minibus which took Ogilby and Sharlene to a disused bakery in Hunter Street, Sandy Row. This empty building had been converted into UDA club and romper room. After Sharlene was sent by Graham to a shop to buy sweets, Ogilby was made to sit on a bench and a hood placed over her head. Two teenagers, Henrietta Cowan and Christine Smith, acted on orders previously given by the unit's leader, Elizabeth Lily Douglas, proceeded to savagely beat Ogilby to death with bricks and sticks. As Ogilby screamed and pleaded for her life, Sharlene, who had already returned from the shop, overheard her mother being beaten and killed. A later autopsy report revealed that Ogilby had sustained 24 blows to the head and body, 14 of which caused a severe fracture to the bulk of her skull. Within weeks of the killing, 10 women and 1 man was arrested in connection with the murder. They were convicted in February 1975. All but 1 minor, whose sentence was suspended, went to prison. The murder case caused widespread revulsion, shock and horror throughout Northern Ireland and remained long in the public psyche, even at a time when bombings and killings were daily occurrence. The Ann Ogilby murder was investigated by the Historical Inquiries Team, which established by the police service of Northern Ireland to investigate the most controversial killings carried out during the Troubles. Lily Douglas arranged for the body's disposal, and an unnamed UDA man later loaded it into a van and dumped it in a ditch in Stockman's Lane near the M1 motorway. It was discovered 5 days later on the 29th of July by motorway maintenance men. The RUC were immediately called to the scene, which was then photographed and mapped. Ogilby, clad in a red jumper, grey trousers and wearing just one shoe, was lying on her back, partly submerged in 18 inches of stagnant water, with her blackened and battered face visible and her arms outstretched. Her mission shoe and a large brown sack was discovered not far away from her body at the top of the ditch. There was no identifying documents found on her. The press, along with local television and radio news bulletins, released details regarding her physical appearance and distinctive rings on her fingers. Hours later, a social worker from Shaftesbury Social Services office, who had scheduled to meet with Ann Ogilby on 24th of July, contacted the RUC, telling them that Ogilby and her daughter Sharlene had arrived at the office late for the appointment but left without explanation before the social worker could speak with Ann. She informed the RUC that Ogilby had not seen since the afternoon. The social worker was then taken to the mortuary, where she confirmed that the dead body inside was Ann. One of her brothers later positively identified her. The police were told Sharlene was in the care of social services. Ogilby's murder caused widespread revulsion and shock throughout Northern Ireland, even though it had taken place during the most turbulent period of the Troubles, when bombings and sectarian killings had become commonplace. Protestants were especially appalled that Ogilby, herself a Protestant, had become a victim of loyalist violence and angrily denounced the UDA. Journalist Kieran Barnes described it as being one of the most brutal murders of the Trouble, adding that its sheer savagery and the fact it was carried out by women against another woman within earshot of her child left a lasting impression upon the public psyche. The UDA leadership had not sanctioned the killing, and there was a general condemnation from the UDA prisoners inside the Maze prison. Within weeks of the killing, the RUC arrested 10 women and 1 man in connection with the murder. This group contained Douglas' entire heavy squad. Most of the women were unemployed, and at least 3 had male relatives imprisoned for paramilitary offences. On the 6th of February 1975, at Belfast City Commission, teenagers Henrietta Cohen and Christine Smith pleaded guilty to murder. They were now aged 18 and 17 respectively. Characterised as being without feeling or remorse, they were convicted of carrying out the murder and sentenced to be detained at Armagh Women's Prison for life at the pleasure of the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. Smith was not the only member of her family to be involved in loyalist paramilitary activity. Her elder brother, prominent South Belfast UDA member Francis Hatchett Smith, 28, was shot dead in Rodney Parade off Donegal Road by the IRA in January 1973 after he, as part of a UDA unit, gunned down Peter Watterson, a 15-year-old Catholic boy, in a drive-by sectarian shooting at the Falls Road, Donegal Road Junction. A roofer by trade who was married with 1 child, he was, despite his wife being Catholic, the local UDA commander in the village area where he lived. Described by the court as the leader of Sandy Rose Women's Unit, Lily Douglas, who had been ordered the fatal beating and punishment, pleaded guilty to manslaughter. The charge of murder was withdrawn on the grounds that it had not actually intended for a heavy squad to kill Ogilby, and she was subsequently sentenced to 10 years imprisonment in Armagh Prison. She received 2 further sentences, which were to run concurrently with her 10 years, or 3 years each, for intimidation and detaining Ogilby against her will. The exact motive for the murder was not established in court. During police interrogation, Douglas maintained that Ogilby's killing was the result of a personal vendetta, stating, quote, "It was not a UDA operation, they had nothing to do with it. It was just a move between a lot of women, a personal thing," end quote. In his book, The Proceedings of Ulster, which was published in 1976, Geoffrey Bell stated that the women murdered her as punishment for her affair with William Young. Henry MacDonald and Jim Cusack suggested that jealousy and bloodlust was the motives for the murder. The others received lesser sentences. Albert Graham and Josephine Brown, after pleading guilty, were sentenced to 3 years imprisonment on charges of being associates after the fact and causing grievous bodily harm to Ann Ogilby. The Crown withdrew the murder charge against the pair after recognising their attempt to prevent Karen and Smith from continuing with the fatal beating. The unit's second in command, Kathleen Wiltler, was given 2 years for intimidation. Maud Tate, 21, and Gracie, 28, Elizabeth Douglas Jr., 19, and Mary Lundrum, 23, were all sentenced to 18 months imprisonment for intimidation, and an unnamed 16-year-old was given an 18-month suspended sentence for intimidation. The convictions resulted in the largest single ingress of loyalist women in Northern Ireland prison. Denouncing the UDA, the trial judge, Mr. Justice McGonigal, stated, quote, "What appears before me today under the name of UDA in a gun law, a vicious, brutalising organisation of persons who takes the law into their own hands and who, by kangaroo courts and the infliction of physical brutality, terrorise a neighbourhood through intimidation," end quote. During the trial, it emerged that plans to kill Ogilby had been formulated by the UDA unit several months before her kangaroo court trial. Lily Douglas was lambasted by Justice McGonigal, quote, "You ordered and directed the punishment of this girl. You chose and chose well those who were to carry out your directions. When you heard of what happened, you organised the cover-up and disposed of the body. Your concern was those happenings should come to light. You were the commander of those women. Your responsibility was great. You are no stranger to crime. You have a record of smuggling, forgery, assault, actual bodily harm, aiding and abetting the keeping of a brothel. Through the last of these was though in 1961 is an indication of your character," end quote. The Northern Irish press dubbed Elizabeth Lily Douglas the Sandy Row executioner. Sharlene Ogilby later married and has 3 children of her own. After her mother's murder, she was taken to live in Sean Mills by her uncle and an aunt. For a while she kept in touch with her brother Gary, but has since lost contact. She has no knowledge of what happened to her other brothers Stephen and Derek. Lily Douglas died shortly after being released from Armagh prison on compassionate grounds in 1979. Kathleen Whitler is also deceased. Henrietta Cowan and Christine Smith were both released from Armagh in December 1983 after serving 9 years. They returned to the Sandy Row area. Loyalist sources claim Smith deeply regretted the part she played in Ogilby's murder. Graham, following his release from prison, also returned to South Belfast. To the present day, he has steadfastly refused to discuss the murder. The rest of the women involved in Ogilby's murder are to date living in Sandy Row or the village. William Young died in 2007. This disused bakery in Hunter Street has since been demolished. Belfast poet Linda Anderson wrote a poem, Gang Bang Ulster Style, based on the Ogilby killing. It was published in August 1989, number 204 edition of Spare Rib, and Ogilby's mother also featured in a Gavin Irwell poem entitled The Gentle Sex. The murder was investigated by the Historical Inquiries Team, which was established by the PSNI to inquire into the most controversial killings perpetrated during the Troubles. Thank you for listening to this episode. This is a Need Media production. We produce Hometown Murders, Mindblown History and a Brief History podcast. The episode is written and hosted by myself, Andrew Knight, and music, sound and editing is by Harry Edmondson.